Sam Darnold has rewritten his own story.
Touchdown, Seahawks!
Sam Darnold shut a lot of people up.
Can you believe it?
So Sam Darnold is on his 5th NFL team, but his first is the starter for a Super Bowl. Naturally, teams are reflecting back on what could have been with Darnold, and so are his teammates. Linebacker Jamal Adams, who played with Darnold in New York, said, man, if only New York had some patience with him. Remember, Adams was dealt to the Seahawks before the 2020 season. He said, he was the guy. Gonna be the guy. He just needed some time. And he wasn't the only one. Here's Justin Jefferson, who was Darnold's #1 last season on missing Darnold in Minnesota.
Everyone knows the difficulty of the quarterback position this year, of how we was dealt it. But of course, having a quarterback that's already had the season under his belt with us, knew the plays, knew the playbook, knew the players, of course, throwing to me, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, all of these guys. I definitely felt like we would have done better.
All right. He put it gently, but we knew what he was getting at. Which team now looks worse as we're 6 days away from the Super Bowl in which Sam Darnold will be starting? Is it the Jets or is it the Vikings? What do you think, Woody?
I would probably have to go with the Vikings. With the Jets, think about this, all the dysfunction. The Jets had two different regimes during the time that Sam Darnold was there. They had John Idzik, general manager, Mike McCagnon. Then they transitioned to Joe Douglas. So there was just a bunch of dysfunction. And by the way, Sam Darnold played 36 games with the Jets. So it wasn't like they just up and just gave up on Sam Darnold so quickly. He had a body of work there. I think with the Jets, they just didn't surround him with enough talent, personnel-wise. But when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, listen, Sam Darnold gets there, they win 14 games. Obviously, we know about what happened towards the tail end of the season last year, and obviously the playoff loss to the Rams. But contrast that with what we've seen from J.J. McCarthy, guy who spent his whole time in the ice tub, and then when he's played, he hasn't lived up to the billing of what his draft status is. And when you hear a receiver talk about, hey, look, if we had Sam Darnold, look at the way that I played when Sam Darnold was here, as opposed to J.J. McCarthy. I think, to me, the choice is the Minnesota Vikings.
It's worse than that for the Vikings than just picking, McCarthy over Darnold, because there was an option to franchise tag Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
They had an option to say, hey, pay him top 5 money for 1 year, and let's see if it was a fluke last year or if we want to keep this going while J.J. McCarthy recovers. It gets even worse than that. They had Daniel Jones in the building last year.
Right.
So you had both Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones both leave. Both of them had Pro Bowl seasons. Of course, Daniel Jones gets unfortunately injured and misses the second half of the year. But they had both of those proven, commodities in the building, and they let them walk. And by week 4, we're watching Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer. So to me, it's the Vikings. You had it in your hands. There was an option where if you didn't want to give Sam Darnold $100 million, I understand he played terribly the last 8 days of the season. 2 horrible losses to the Lions and the Rams. I get that. But you could at least hedge your bet and say, we have enough money here, we have enough salary cap, we can franchise tag Sam Darnold, see if it was a fluke season. They didn't do that. They let him walk. And sure enough, Seattle's the recipient, and they're playing in a Super Bowl while Minnesota's in shambles right now.
I say?
Well, it's a trifecta. The only thing that I would tell you, the biggest breaking news is that there was actually somebody that looked worse than the Jets. That's the Vikings. They look worse than the Jets in this particular situation. To say in any category that you could come up with that somebody looks worse than the Jets is the ultimate indictment, which will explain why they'll be looking for a new head of football operations because of Adolfo and how they had to let him go. This was an egregious error, and here's why it was an egregious error. Because it was rife, in my opinion, Peter and Dame, it was rife with insensitivity and dismissiveness. Now, why would I say that? Shay, Justin Jefferson is your wide receiver. He's your #1. Jordan Addison is no scrub. Hawkinson is no scrub. You have weapons. How do you just dismiss them? How do you take them for granted like that? How do you just sit up there and say, well, we can get anybody to put in a quarterback position and, we'll be just fine. It was the height of arrogance, and I think it was insensitive and dismissive, and I use those words. Understand that the Minnesota Vikings dropped from a +100 to a -11 in point differential. This is what they did. I'm looking at their numbers right now. Over 17 games, they allowed just 1 more point this year than they did the previous year. Just 1 more point. but they scored 88 points less than they did the previous year. And then I'm looking at a guy like Justin Jefferson. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Jefferson was in the conversation. Am I wrong, fellas? Am I wrong, Shay? Weren't we talking about him a couple of years ago as maybe going down potentially as one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history? Weren't we mentioning and saying when his career is over, we're going to be talking about him amongst the all-time greats? And we mentioned names like Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and Terrell Owens. And we were talking about this brother on that level, him and Jamar Chase specifically. We were talking about him like that. Do y'all know that he just had 2 touchdowns this season? 2. He had 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns this season. He went from averaging 98 receiving yards per game to 61. You got to be kidding me. And then I'm looking at here, his career lows. Catches per game, receiving yards, yards per reception, touchdown catches, and success rate. All career lows. So what has me suspicious right now, monitoring the Minnesota Vikings, is now that Adolfo's gone, as your GM, as your man calling the shots, right? Now we're hearing, well, it really didn't have anything to do with Kevin O'Connell. He really didn't want to lose Sam Darnold. You know, that really wasn't his decision. BS. I don't want to hear that. The quarterback whisperer that had established himself as one of the bright young coaches in football, there is no way in hell he didn't have say as to Sam Darnold walking out that building. Peter, I don't believe it. I don't believe for 1 second that man, considering his cachet and what he had built in Minnesota and guiding them to a 14-2 record and guiding them to the playoffs and being the quarterback whisperer and somebody who was seen as one of the great coaches in the game today. How the hell do you not have any say over Sam Darnold staying on board as your quarterback? Somehow, some way you convince them, oh man, I'll make J.J. McCaffrey work. I'll make him work. Ain't no big deal. I make J.J. McCarthy work. Don't even worry about it. That's what you did. And it was false. And so to me, I would not have blamed Justin Jefferson if he had asked to be traded. That's how disgusted he should have been. You can't do that to a receiver. You can't do that to pass catchers. You're going to get rid of a quarterback that you know guided you to a 14-2 record for the first 16 games of the season. So what about those 8 days? Okay, especially since you could have franchised him for 1 more year and see what he got. You owed that to them, and you let them down, period.
I do think that there was Stephen A., you actually touched on, I do think there was a level of arrogance because we do call Kevin O'Connell like the quarterback whisperer. Yeah. He's done a hell of a job, and I still think he's one of the brightest minds that we do have in our game.
Sure.
But I've always said, you don't let good quarterbacks walk out the building. You just don't. And Sam, you can say whatever you want about Sam Darnold at the end of the year, and listen, he finished the year bad. But his body of work should have told you, hey, let's wind it back. Let's go back. Let's do it again 1 more year. No doubt. Just to see.
Franchise tag is a beautiful option.
That's why it's at their disposal. You could have easily franchise tagged them. You could have easily opened up to a competition and just said, you know what? Let's see if Sam Darnold can do this again. If he does it again, then guess what? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign this guy to a long-term extension.
I'll tell you, we're on Monday right now. And Sam Darnold's going to get in front of a microphone the next 5 days, and they're going to ask him these questions about the Jets and the Vikings. I've gotten to know Sam Darnold very well back from when he was in the Jets, and I was covering that team and through all his different stuff. He's not going to give an inch. You're going to be so sick of seeing Sam Darnold deflect on all of this. He's got no bitterness.
Sure.
He just moves straight forward.
He's a great dude.
He's a great dude. That said, the story for him has always been when you need him most, he's going to come up small. And he's come up huge those last 2 weeks. Yeah. So you could justify, and Stephen A., you were great on this last week, you could almost justify saying, you know what, those last 8 days, those last 2 games, there wasn't a long line of teams that were rushing to sign Sam Darnold. But that's the beauty of the franchise tag for these teams, to have that at their disposal. You pay him for 1 year, then you see, and if you thought it was a fluke or you thought that this guy was just a one-year wonder, well, let's at least, he's earned the right for us to see it one more time. Because last year, he won a great game in Chicago. He won a great game in Seattle against these very Seahawks, where he led that team all the way back. Sam Darnold had the most comeback victories in the league last year. He was awesome last year, and it was all tainted by, A, the fact they already spent a top 10 pick on McCaffrey, or McCarthy, and then B, the fact that it ended as ugly as it did.
I will say, though, I mean, look, I get what we're saying about the Vikings. Like, this year, they were in the bottom 5 in every offensive statistical category, practically. However, Sam Darnold last year, now that we have time to reflect on it, like, he had never been in those big situations before, those last 2 games of the season, the last 6 days or whatever, 8 days of the season was. Never when he was with the Jets. So to just cast him away after that did feel a little bit unfair. Go ahead, S.A.
Well, it wasn't so much, listen, in the end, if you have trepidation about Sam Darnold, so be it. It's not the end of the world at that particular moment in time. It's not a crime. But you make sure you got somebody else. Mm-hmm. You don't make sure that the replacement is a dude that never threw an NFL pass in a regular season game. You know that the last time we saw him, he was winning a championship at the University of Michigan. He was winning the national championship. We get that part. But he had the meniscus tear, and ultimately he was out for his entire rookie year. You don't let go of somebody else that guided you to a 14-3 record during the regular season for somebody who's never thrown a damn pass in the NFL. You got to make sure that you know what this cat can bring. It was arrogance. It was taking those cats for granted. And you know who else it was taking for granted? The rest of the NFL. Those are some grown-ass men you're going up against, who are incredibly intelligent, very experienced, know what they're doing, know how to rattle youngsters in the National Football League. We've seen some great, phenomenal players come through the NFL at very, very young ages. Look at what Jaden Daniels did last year with the Commanders. Look at how it looked this year. Flip side, look at how Caleb Williams looked his first year with Eberflus as his coach. Look at how he looks now that he has Ben Johnson. There's more that goes into it than just their ability. But in the end, what the NFL has taught you, which you guys both know better than me, it's an incredibly complicated situation to be in. You got to have all your ducks in order. Kevin O'Connell should have known that. Just like the GM, Quasi. You should have known. Listen, you cannot do that. And I keep trying to always, Adolphe Mensah. I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name. But it's like, how do you let that happen? You don't let that happen. Now, if McCarthy had been somebody that was playing in the NFL and had a modicum of success first, it would make sense. But to have zero experience and to let Sam Darnold or any quarterback walk out the door and to sit up there and say, we're going to be all right with this guy. Come on now. That's ridiculous. And as far as I'm concerned, Kevin O'Connell is lucky he wasn't booted out the door. I'm not saying he deserved to be fired. Please don't get me wrong. He's too great for that. But he certainly should stomach a whole bunch of blame for what happened to the Minnesota Vikings last season. And if I'm Justin Jefferson, I would have major attitude with my boss. Major.
Competing for the 1 seed last year were the Minnesota Vikings. This year, at the bottom of the NFC North. Meanwhile, the Jets still looking for a franchise quarterback. Coming up after the